What if I told you that you queued up to carry a game, but then you had a level 1 Fiesta that resulted in the enemy ADC Zeri being 3 kills up? And then you had to use everything you know about the jungle in order to carry step by step the early, mid, and late game, and then you'd have to put on the absolute most monster performance to actually carry the game. But how? And as in a perfect jungle game that showcases the complete skill set that you need to thrive and climb in Season 13 and beyond. So if you want an S+ or MVP every single game you play, follow this video step by step and it will showcase all you need to know. But if you want to cover every possibility in the jungle and really become a better jungler to leave your MMR, the courses on Virkayu.gg are the solution. Everything you need within a few hours, no combing of information necessary, simply fast climbing, fast knowledge. Why wait to reach your peak when you can just do it in the next couple of weeks with all the knowledge through one weekend? Not to mention we have copious success stories on the website as well as one-on-one coaching, a coaching VOD library, and a free jungle improvement PDF. So yes, both junglers are compromised, and yes, the EVELYNN is going Conqueror. That is a side point to this video. Sometimes there's just a rune that certain players synergize with much better than others. It is not better than Electrocute on a de facto basis. It is not better than First Strike on a de facto basis. However, you will see later in the mid game there's a big fight and the EVELYNN has 43 extra AP to use on her Qs, on her Rs, and on her Es. Well, basically, yeah, all her spells. But as you saw that level 1 transpire, the EVELYNN leaves the base, and yes, both junglers are compromised for their 4 clears. So the EVELYNN does the classic Raptors, Red, Krugs. This gives level 3 and the opportunity to gank on the bottom lane. The Graves goes for the Red Raptors, knowing that EVELYNN most likely will have to go leashless, and when that's the case, you often go Raptors. So you could look to flex a variety of clears, you know, Raptors, Krugs, Red into the top side, keep your full sequence going, but when you have a 3-kill Zeri at level 1, level 2, level 3, you should probably do something about that, especially when she has no flash. And this is already where the knowledge comes in, okay? So we're focusing on the early game now, then the mid game, then the late game, but it starts off with segmenting your map into quadrants and understanding what your goal is. We knew the Graves would be behind on tempo just because of the respawn timers, but we also knew we had to get the shutdown on Zeri no matter what, just to try and curtail her influence. Following this, because we've got control of our red side quadrant, the Graves ganks mid and goes to his bottom side quadrant. Now we're doing what we want to do, opposite of the map to the enemy jungler. This allows us to do the blue into the Scuttle Crab. We use this pressure to try gank top lane. Graves uses his blue side basically to try and gank mid lane. He succeeds. Now he can move on down because he knows the EVELYNN, because of the respawn timers, wouldn't have been so delayed after 1 minute 30 to start her Raptors. That means a very stereotypical timers will work in his favor. Maybe a couple seconds delayed, but that 3 minute 55-ish second spawn of the Raptors will work, following that into the Krug respawn timer that she would have taken after the red. Now the EVELYNN goes looking, because she knows that's what the Grave is doing, to take his Raptors, but obviously his are significantly more delayed. And so we basically say, well, I'll ward, repeat gank top lane, and grab that kill for myself. Now, as EVELYNN will kill the Cassandra in the top lane, we know we saw the Graves go mid lane first with 8 CS. He then pathed downwards and shows back up with 20. By the simple logical extrapolation of pathing and timing, he did blue grump into the Scuttle Crab back to the mid lane. We now see him go down. He shows bottom lane with 20 CS before he then goes back into our jungle, so most likely now he's doing our Krugs. So the EVELYNN makes a pathing error, which is not really something you talk a lot about in this elo, but at the same time it does happen. We had 2 options after the gank on the top side. Scan to clear any potential vision, which is great. She does this, but if I told you, hey, the guy shows up with 20, shows up bottom lane with 20 still, and then floats back into our jungle, we know the timers of our Raptors and Krugs. We know that the Krugs and Raptors are both available. Given his pathing, that means he's most likely taking our Krugs and looking at the bottom lane for a potential dive. We can see this because it's our team. Thus, now after ganking the top lane, we can scan and move straight to do his tier 1 Krugs. We also have the timer on the Raptors at this point because we know 8 CS Red plus Raptors, so we can probably snack those as well and then fall back into our blue side. The other alternative is, yes, scan on the way down, clear the vision. We see the Graves again. We know he's down on the Krug. Let's go ahead and take his Raptors first, look mid lane, and then fall back to the blue side. She doesn't extrapolate this, clears the ward with the intent to go to the Grump, and then we have visual confirmation of the Graves showing up after taking our Krugs. Okay, we'll quickly flex and steal some Raptors, look mid lane, nothing. Okay, then we can go to the Grump on the Wolves. Yes, this isn't ideal, but when you're farming jungler and you've kind of split the map vertically just a little bit, you basically have to understand, look, I can take a few things, he's gonna take a few things, I need to impact what I can. All of this, the whole summary of the early game when you have unfortunate events that put you in a gold deficit with fed laners, is patience. Patience and control your own econ. Now to this stage you have a pretty good idea they're on the dragon thanks to your bottom lane kind of showcasing this, and while this isn't the sort of flow we're looking for in terms of early game, you know, sequencing and farming and taking control of the game as a farming or scaling jungler, the best thing you can do is take what you can, and if what you can take denies him while he's doing the dragon, then we'll use that. Now the Cassandra did a superb job, moving on down, deep warding her jungle, great against an EVELYNN, warding the middle pixel bush, so even though the Evelynn has a scanner, she wasn't entirely sure of where wards were, decides to cross the river and go steal the Krugs as well. The Cassante shows up, but we'll go back to base now. Not the most efficient use of time, but at least it was something. And that's very important because we always talk about efficiency on this channel and making sure that we're sequencing and you're doing all of these things perfectly and correctly, but sometimes you just have to adapt to what the game gives you. Now here's where things get a little bit interesting, but still you're kind of just focusing on shutting people down and getting whatever econ you can. The Graves is a foolish move and tries to steal your red. Where else would you be going at this time? He's pushed out, we're able to snack that, get level 6. We try float bot lane, we try float for gangs. The Graves now 99% is going to go and take that Herald, knowing your bottom side, knowing that you and him have now swapped sides of the map. Of course, he's now on the top side, you're on the bottom side, which does give you time to work. This is always the benefit of this kind of jungling when you're behind and you're not able to really stop the enemy jungler just yet. Hold on though, we're getting there. You basically make sure you're falling back to your camps, moving back into the rivers, capitalizing on kills you can get, and showcasing a bit of patience in those side lane ganks. And yes, at this particular point in the early game, you know Graves' top side. You would love to sequence up and control things and deny him the ability to take the Herald. You want to protect your top laner. When you trail and follow and do that kind of stuff, you're letting him control the game, you are playing his game, and you'll never win. In this particular case, you know by him doing that, he's giving you a lot of windows to offset the lead he gave his bottom lane. So Graves takes a Herald, he takes some stuff on the top side, you kill his bottom lane a few times, you dive them, you take his blue and his grub. Basically, again, hand checking equal and opposite, which is perfect. Because if you're not taking the things away from him, whatever he gets, you're at least trying to go as equal as possible. Now, of course, full plate stacked, trying to snowball the Cassante into the Rengar, taking the first turret. You cannot always compete with these game state elevations, but what can we now do at this particular stage of the game? You know, it's 11-12 minutes. Normally, there's a lot more to talk about in the early game, but in this case, it was really, look, I'm going to take top side, you take bottom side, and now we swap. You go take the Herald, you kill my top lane, I kill your bottom lane. How great. But at some point, it has to end. The most important thing is the Evelynn was controlling a lot of things. And now, of course, our red side quadrant is respawning, the dragon is available, the Graves will be going to the bottom side. Enough is enough. Now you swap, now you go and compete, and now you start to fight. Now you look for those picks, now you don't allow vertical anymore, we're done. Right, here we go. So I'm giving you the dragon, I'm gonna go Krugs into Raptors. This stops the possibility for any sort of vertical counter jungling at this time. We also know that we can go and gank mid lane with our ult, with the Yone, and with our camouflage. We do exactly that as well. Pulling out the abilities, pulling out the maximum kills, and then leveraging that into a counter jungling opportunity. Your Raptors, my Raptors. Graves has to hold mid lane, we can take an RNG Scuttle, already boosting itself up to that Krug value of experience and gold. Yeah, that's right. People, you shouldn't ignore the Scuttle Crab in the river. You should take those things. Pull back to the blue side, go back to base. Now we've got a Mesh Eyes, a Rocket Belt, a needlessly large rod. We got a Sork Boots, or a pair of Sork Boots, I should say. And the Graves again chose bottom lane, takes another turret. What's the most fundamental step and the second part of the early game into this mid-game transition when you're in this scenario? Bend, but do not break. Swoop, but do not overcommit. Make sure you're controlling your jungle, your quadrant clearing as best you can. You are looking for picks on targets that you can very easily snack away and ensure you have numbers advantage on any subsequent play necessary, because we cannot afford to keep giving up dragons and heralds and eventually win. At some point, giving up 2 dragons and a herald, which is quite normal in these kinds of situations, that's fine, but that's the limit. And again, we look to loop that control. Kill, scuttle, herald, blue side quadrant. Now what's next? We're making sure that we are always taking whatever we can where the Graves isn't, and then falling back to control what's ours. Now as you go back to base here, you pick up another needlessly large rod. You have a control ward. You know that you have no tier 1s in the side lanes, and you have a tier 1 in the mid lane. You have no turrets of your own at all, and you're the only one that's remotely fed. That means you know the enemy team is going to try and group up and punch down your mid tier 1 to look to, control the next dragon, souls, barons, and win the game easily. You cannot allow this. Everything we've done so far in this game is to give us the opportunity to make the right play in this moment, which means if you're Rengar, Evelynn, Assassins, Kiana, it doesn't really matter, we're looking to flank, take out a priority target, and ensure we have numbers advantage for the subsequent fight. Obviously, we have to wait for our team, and if our team don't really show up, then guess what you can do? This is the macro call. You can shove that mid lane, and if you really have to give up that third dragon, I don't really want to, but it's better than dying and losing the game. You can just push that turret yourself, push the next wave up, do some counter jungling, catch and push out the top wave a bit, just keep getting yourself fed. However, if you have the herald, drop it, force the shove there, which means it does give you the position to maybe make a better pick and then fall back to the dragon. As we did here, the Varus also gets to push out the bottom lane because of this. The enemy team with the lead will not allow this. So as always, I like to talk about jungle theory. I like to tell you what you can do in different scenarios. That's what each video is about. Not every video is the same. There's different things we need to talk about, triggers and power things. However, Eventually, if you're fed or not fed, your mechanics will be necessary. There's gonna be a fight. You have to know your abilities, you have to know your damage output, and you have to play it well. If you die, you could lose the game. That's what this kind of game is. The step-by-step process to perfect jungling and to basically making sure you win the game only works if you're able to actually make the right plays. But what you don't want to do is overchase and commit, which we don't do when we go back to base. Look at the difference. We now have Rocket Belt, Death Cap, and 25 Giga Stags. What next now to actually take this game over the finish line, even though most of the gold lead that we have in this game is on us, which means our team without us are not as useful as you might think they are. And I talk about this all the time in the mid and the late game. If you leave the base now and you go, say, Raptors into your Wolves into your Grump and you path away from your team, you're screwing over the game. Path to your Grump, Wolves, Raptors, you can do red maybe, but the point is you're pathing in such a way that you can react to something or loop back to something quickly, like, you know, killing the Graves and making the pig. Then Yone splitting on the bottom side, they decide to totally overcommit to kill him. The difference between a challenger jungler, diamond jungler, gold jungler, and low elo jungler is the ability to make the quick shot call. In this case, hey, quick, let's go, Baron, now. But it's only 21 minutes. Well, the Baron isn't really that difficult to take, let's go. And if you can make these shot calls as the jungler, trust me, in solo queue it does work. You just ping, say, look, let's go, this guy's bottom lane. They're chasing our Yone, quickly. More often than not in most elos, and again, I coach and made a lot of courses, I watched so many VODs. I basically recorded 80 videos worth of content for these courses. Yeah, that's not a joke, that's literally what it is in terms of time. And I've seen it at every single MMR. Yes, it's less likely to happen in silver, but if you do it and they follow, free win. Platinum, it's definitely where things start to happen. And diamond, if you miss this, you really do risk the possibility of losing. And my friends, you go back to base thinking, wow, what a cool call, I'm so amazing. Let me go do some camps. Team, Rengo's top lane, yes to base, why are you fighting? Team! And what are you gonna do? Watch them die and then split push your EVELYNN. Now you could do, but if you're fed enough and truly juiced enough, let's go. You have to be the last man standing. You have to play perfectly. You have to understand your champion's output. There is no shortcut, I'm sorry. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. It is knowing your output, knowing your champion's limitations, and playing around it perfectly as you anticipate what the enemy champions are going to do or try to do to you. Now, if you're Bel'Veth with Void Fishies, yeah, we could go mid lane, we could go top lane, we could just really shove and create pressure that way. That is one way to do things. But in low elo mid MMRs, sometimes it's better just to involve yourself, the level 16 self you are, and get all the kills. Screw your team. They set them up for you, you knock them down. And now you can fully employ the swoop method, which you could bring it in sooner, you know, when you haven't taken that mid tier 1. But effectively, this is saying, go from side to side, control the rivers, get into their jungle, make a pick. Now swoop back, shadow your team while they do the pushing. Is there someone other side? Kill them as well. Push this wave, push that wave, take their camps. You're living in the river into their jungle zone, and they can never set up a team fight because you're trapping. I do this as Zarya, you can do this as Nidalee, you can do this as any assassin, obviously. Sure, you might be a tank and maybe you don't exactly have this power, but if you're Sejuani, there's no reason why you can't trap on a bush, hit the CC, and your team can follow up, hopefully. The point is, this level of control is not champion specific, it's not class specific, it's a playstyle, it's a way of life. It's a, I'm going to win this game because you are never getting stuff for free again. And how unassuming was it? Because we just kind of said to the Graves, look, take some dragons, take my top side, I'll take your bot side, take my bot side, I'll take your top side. You reacted to the information quickly, we offset some of the leads that he put through, and yes, we have to go Zhonya's this game as EVELYNN because we're going Conqueror. Long fights, lots of healing, lots of extra AP stacks and damage. This isn't your regular one-shot and get out. We are definitely using our Q to stick around as long as possible. We're also the only realistic damage threat, and if they kill us, we probably lose, which is what you guys always tell me, right? So this is a good example. Now, fortunately, the EVELYNN does employ these principles. We make a few picks and we shove up an inhib. However, and unfortunately, as is the way even in high elo, hey guys, we can end. Hey guys, we did not watch the death respawn timers, the fact that there was a Baron up, and you know, you die, your team dies, everyone dies, you cry a little bit, they get a Baron, and now you're going, oh no, now I have to prolong this game by 10 minutes. This is what I'm talking about. If you can leave, let your team die. If you can leave, take some camps, push a wave, threaten a potential steal, maybe even get it. Maybe you just have to give it, but you can take all of your camps, all of their camps. You can push another wave somewhere else. There's always pressure release, okay? So that's what you're trying to keep in mind here. Always look for the pressure release, even in the down moments of this particular game phase. And now your team are like, well, we might as well just 1-3-1 because I'm Rengar, I can go top side, Yone can go bottom side. The red team says, well, if you're gonna 1-3-1, how do you counter that? with a hardcore engage, but fortunately, EVELYNN has now taken out the Rakan, so one little numbers advantage for us. We can then join up with our Yone and start to hit this one to get the bottom inhib because we still have the middle inhib down. And with this sort of pressure, as long as you can leave and escape, maybe look back around for another pick, get your final itemization, get a nice elixir for your juice, you now have enough pressure just to place yourself in positions to get picks. Don't worry too much about farming, shove the map up, look for someone out of position, pull the trigger, kill them. Keep repeating that process 1 or 2 minutes more, and with those inhibs down, you'll very easily have that super minion pressure, which of course you just have to play behind, but someone on the enemy team will always get impatient, will always step out where they shouldn't, will detach from someone else, and that's where you, the assassin, make the pick. That's where EVELYNN is strong, Rengar is strong, Talon is strong, but if you're playing another class of champion, don't step out and die trying to be an assassin, but you can push the waves together, you can shadow with your team. If you're playing a Deathball comp, just move on up together, push the top side inhib. The principles are the same. Look to make a pick, leverage that numbers advantage, wait for the minions to push in, complete the job. And as you can see with 23 kills, this was a methodical, equally spaced, dominating 1v9 performance. Early game wasn't very great, wasn't dynamic, we just had to get what we could. That's it, end of story. But we made the tempo play early, which basically gave us a little bit of an advantage over the Graves. You then go ahead, and as long as you're getting something while he's getting something, that's okay. Until you get to that end of the early game phase into the mid game, alright, no more. I'm fed, you're fed, let's make the play. And that's when the game started to get busted open because of the EVELYNN's patience in teamfights, in ganks, in farming, in counter jungling, just sitting back, watching, observing. This was an exquisite example of someone understanding their champion, as well as the jungle, while making one little bit of a mistake in giving up that Baron for the reverse, but they never gave it pressure or control. Now, if you want to fill in some of these gaps with the most important jungling commandments, that is linked on the top right of your screen now, but if you want to fill in the gaps at a different level, to know everything you ever needed to know for your MMR, the Virkayu GG courses will set you on your path. And this early game might not be as dynamic as others that we've discussed because of the nature of the gold lead and the swing from level 1, but it's very important for you to understand that this principle works ahead or behind.